Ultrakill is easily one of the best modern FPS games. It's not hard to see why. From the intense encounters that give room for player expression, the heavy emphasis on replayability and improvement, and the astounding art style, it's a game that's captured the attention of many. This game also has plenty of highlight moments that elevate it from great but not memorable to an unforgettable experience you keep going back to. One of these high moments isn't a single level, however, but an entire section of the game, as the sixth layer of Heresy can be considered the peak of FPS gameplay. So, enough wasting time. Let's just get into the first reason why this layer is so great: the visuals. One of Ultrakill's strongest points in general is the art direction, where every layer has its own unique theme, and every level uses that theme in new and unique ways. Limbo starts out like a peaceful garden, only to naturally transition into a burning world and then a castle. Gray is a desert, which eventually results you going into a gigantic pyramid in the background, and then the coolest set piece in any video game happens. This is no exception with Heresy, which looks like a combination of forged and a typical church architecture, along with hellish imagery, because, we're in hell. The first level starts with a typical hall with stained glass, and then you go into a room with 3 doors and a skeleton hanging from the ceiling. There's a dark room lit by red pillars, and a room of chains and lava. Gabriel's boss room is a massive organ room with a pool of blood, and the entrance of P2 is a massive sea of blood raining from the sky. However, these visuals mean nothing if the game itself isn't fun. Thankfully, the gameplay of these 3 levels in Heresy can be considered the best in the entire game. To do that, let's go to a strange starting point when talking about the levels, as we're going to talk about the boss fight first because I don't like to save the best for last. With most layers in Ultrakill, the boss fight would be the standout moment and the most memorable part of the entire layer. While that can be true for aspects of Hate in a vacuum, it simply gets overshadowed by its 2 brothers, but that still doesn't mean it's great. The first time you go into this game, you're greeted by this grand palace of darkness, with Gabriel monologuing as you traverse the level. Something I want to note is that when Gabriel says, "As to you are almost always at a portion where you go directly onto the moving platform. That's something else I like about this level. The monologue intensity directly matches up with the platform, creating a real feel of gameplay and story being tied together. The regular path to the boss is long, but if you need to get P ranks, you can just use vertical mobility to get to the boss room immediately, meaning you don't have to waste much time. Previous stages would often force you to do boss run backs if you wanted to P rank a boss, but Hakia has gotten better at providing shortcuts for the player with the Wrath and Heresy boss fights, showing progression in game design. And this is just talking about the boring part of the stage. When you enter the boss fight, it starts out with one of the best pre-boss speeches, really selling the rage Gabriel has. Speaking of rage, the boss fight starts out with Gabriel in rage, which both raises the stakes of the boss fight in-game and also ties in with the story. I also like how the boss fight immediately starts after the monologue instead of there being a pause before the fight begins. As for his attack patterns, his first phase is a much more aggressive version of his typical fight, foregoing most of his projectiles for extended combos. His one projectile is now a homing attack, meaning you either need to dodge better or just parry it. Of course, he also taunts you, but the level of the game it was barely a factor due to how quickly the battle goes. He does a lot of damage, but he goes down quickly to your newfound weaponry, so sometimes the battle can seem like a race to see who dies first. This applies to the second phase too, as he is no longer in range, but the orbiting swords of the first fight return and he teleports more, forcing the player to be more wary of their surroundings. Again, this is a battle of pure aggression, really leaning into the kind of playstyle Hakita wants from the player. After the fight, there plays a story cutscene that shows what Gabriel is up to after you beat him half to death. I don't really know what else to say that it's a good way to continuing Gabriel's character arc, from blindly following the council to realizing that he's fighting over nothing, as so many others in Ultrakill do. One more thing to note about this stage is the music. The Ultrakill soundtrack is just filled with bangers, but the music in Heresy just knocks it out of the park. The build to the fight between Gabriel is slow and melancholic, ending with an organ that is implied to be played by Gabriel himself. His boss music is also incredible, as a great reprise of the original theme that has a lot more rage and energy to it, really emphasizing the pure rage of Gabriel. Overall, 6 years of great stage on its own, it only gets better from here. Because you've P-ranked every stage in Ultrakill from this point and defeated Minos Prime, One specific turn can lead to the ultimate challenge in Ultrakill's main campaign. Before P2 was brought upon us, Akira said how P2 was going to be so much harder than P1 was. We should have taken his warning more seriously, as the stage proved to be a Sisyphean task for anyone that wasn't consistently grinding the game. But this isn't a Halo 2 type challenge where they just throw a bunch of damage at you. This is more of a fair challenge. It can get evil at some points, but it's not a stage that just tries to kill with cheap gimmicks. Before we talk about difficulty though, let's talk about the battleground the stage takes on. If we're in a palace or a church twisted against its own intentions, Windworld resembles more of a grand city, the stage becoming more like a prison when you go down. The stage starts with a walk down this desolate place, with calm yet unsettling music playing as you get ready for what's ahead. Spoiler alert, it's man-made horrors beyond direct comprehension. The stage immediately starts with the infamous Weezer room, which needs no introduction. Kill 2 of the servers in the room, and a ferryman shows up. Kill all of them, and then Obama decides he's had enough of your existence and sends his drone strikes. This room really tests how well you do in closed spaces after you may be used to being able to just fly away and avoid consequences. Make it a unique challenge. After you kill the ferryman and take down the angels, you come to the realization that P2 is full of diabolical enemy combinations designed to test your strength. As the next room has 6 schisms, 2 sword machines, a sentry, and the idle mind flayer created by Satan himself. This room tests the skill of being able to deal with a typical room of enemies while being chased down by an invincible foe that has constant homing projectiles, hit scan, and teleporting slaps. It's really hard, but still really fun. The next room gets a bit easier on you by giving you a Cerberus and 2 street cleaners in a hallway, while the Mind Flayer is still chasing you. However, the next room might be the 4th hardest room in the level, which is still very hard. You must deal with a similar steps to the first room, with 2 sword machines, a sentry, and if one invisible Mind Flayer was enough, they'd run a second one. The real challenge is keeping up your style, so the hard damage doesn't build up too fast. Either that, or just kill everything quickly. But don't catch your breath yet, as killing the machines brings out 2 Maurices and Virtues, which fortunately is a bit easier than the previous ordeal, as they're not too hard to kill, you just have to avoid them. After that, it's time to fight the Mind Flayers that have been tormenting you for the past rooms, which is a nice end to the previous battles. But the double battles against hard enemies aren't over yet, as you have 2 insurrectionists to deal with, which thankfully is much easier than they were before thanks to the cannonball. Either that, we're getting cheesed with environmental hazards. Speaking of environmental hazards, the next room consists of a tunnel of blood with enemies with hard to avoid projectiles. For the first room I had 2 Maurices, 2 Virtues, a sentry, and the second room having a Maurice, 2 sentries, and 2 Cerberus. This room has a pretty similar dynamic to the first room, except you have an added factor with the blood tally and potentially take out a lot of food with some creative thinking. After this is the final room, which has some strays, 2 sword machines, a ferryman, and an invincible stalker. Did I mention this level contains some creatively evil enemy combinations? The level becomes a not too hard encounter turned insanely difficult by the fact you must either deal with a bunch of sand enemies, kill everything before the stalker blows itself up without dying, or play a game of keep away while trying not to die to everything else. And before you can catch your breath, the room draws in 4 sentries in each corner, and an invincible hideous mask to really drive the point home that this level wants you to die. This part of the stage requires high movement magic to either dodge or interrupt the sentries to properly avoid damage. Oh yeah, and the sucker is still here, and the idol has not been revealed yet, so you better kill everything fast. After all of this, the game draws another wave where now the hideous mask is killable, but now a pack of Virtues and Cerberus have entered the ring. You must either pick your poison between the sand Cerberus or constantly getting nuked by the Virtues way above. Once again, the Stalker is still there. Until you kill everything, then the Stalker becomes easy pickings. All these rooms may seem insurmountable, but with enough creativity, good usage of weapon, and reflexes, it's perfectly doable. Besides, there's one silver lining to this: the music. From after the Weezer room to the end of the gauntlet, the Rack Tenebra Rosso's Senge plays, which is just indescribably good and has a unique feel from a lot of the tracks because 1, the heavy use of organ makes it feel a lot more dramatic than the breakcore of the rest of Ultrakill, and 2, it's just made it by a completely different artist than every other track, that being Takija and Church. However, the highlight of the level is still yet to come, because after this gauntlet, You finally reach the prison of the Prime Soul and find yourself against Flesh Panopticon. The arena looks great with the prison theme, however the boss itself is lackluster. Don't get me wrong, it isn't bad, but mostly just an endurance test before you get to fight the real boss. The music is also good, but not really anything to write home about, as it's a bit too similar to the Flesh Prison's theme to stand out. However, what is good is the boss transition, as Sisyphus Prime tears through his prison mid-fight. It's a great set piece and it's cool to see the first time, but I prefer the earlier version, as I feel like it just flows better. As for the boss fight against Sisyphus Prime, it's simply amazing. It really takes the intensity of Minos Prime and cranks up further, as you're now testing against more teleports and silent attacks, with more of an emphasis on parrying melee attacks. It's a great evolution of a previously great fight, however I still prefer Minos more for two reasons. The first reason is storytelling and build-up, as while Team Sisyphus wasn't that present and not that compelling of a character, Minos is constantly built up and has such a great tragic backstory that really makes you feel for him as a character. The second is the music. Sisyphus' theme is great, however it doesn't have the same intensity and history as Order. The lay motifs are tied to the desert more than anything else, where the Requiem lay motif is all throughout Act 1. It's a bit of a weird reason to prefer one boss to another, but it still matters. Overall, Way of the World is an incredibly challenging stage, but it's still fair enough to be not frustrating and pushes their skill to the limit. However, this still isn't the peak of Ultrakill, because while not starting with your first stage is a weird choice, the reason I did it is because we saved the best for last. And oh boy, 6-1 really is the best. Cry for the Leapers are our first impression of Layer 6, and boy does it make a good one. Immediately you are greeted by the striking visuals of the area, and a basic encounter of two Maurices in a sword machine. It's simple, it's engaging, it shows how much the stakes have increased. As the first level of Gluttony, the first encounter will be a single malicious face, but now we're fighting two and a sword machine to boot. After this, you grab a hub area that really isn't a hub area that takes you in a hallway with two filths. You then enter the spooky room, which is a wave 1 of filth and soldiers, with another wave of sword machine, strays, and schisms. While the encounter itself is okay, what makes this room memorable are again the visuals. The complete dark of the blood-red pillars really sells the feeling of the Slayer being truly hellish. This continues with the next room, which consists of platforms held above lava by chains, and it contains two virtues, a malicious face, and a sentry. This room tests less of raw skills and more of quickly killing large enemies before they can hit you with high damage attacks. You then grab the red skull for the room, go to the next hallway where you place the skull, and then... This mode is easily one of the most incredible in any game, probably going with the initial reveal of Anna Rolando in Dark Souls. The combination of the transition from darkness to the overpowering red mist in the start of music really gets you hyped for the rest of the level. Speaking of music, Ultra Deposit has to be my favorite track in the entire game. It's incredibly high-art and really gives a feeling of power, especially when the glory motif hits. But is the gameplay good enough to deserve this track? Yes! The first row is an open space filled with an incredible variety of enemies, really testing your knowledge and ability to deal with crowds. There is also a dual-wield power-up below, giving an extra option to deal with this encounter, or save it for another. One of these encounters you can save it for is a hidden boss of the stage, which is two civilian insurrections which you must kill in close succession. It's a great challenge, and there's enough space on the top to properly fight it, although it has gotten a bit easier due to the introduction of the cannonball. Back to the main path, there is then a room with platforms above lava like the last round of the first half, with strays, soldiers, schisms, and a malicious face at the highest point, creating a unique encounter that combines combat with platforming. This con encounter is also completely optional, as you can just go above the building. The next section also goes for a style combining platform and combat, as it consists of groups of one type of enemy on a platform each, with a virtue protected by an item at the end, creating a choice of just taking one platform at a time, or just taking out the virtue and cleaning the fodder at the end. After this, you can choose to take an overhealth, but at the cost of fighting a mind flayer, malicious face, and sentry at far range, creating an interesting encounter with very thin environment, all of high risk but high reward. But it wouldn't be a legendary FPS level without the standout mode. All Gillied Up has the final hold, the Covenant has the final battle against the two Scarabs, so what does Ultra Apostasy have? Well, I'll just let it speak for itself.
Machine, I know you're here. I can smell the insolent stench of your blood-stained hands. I await you down below. Come to me.
It's simply perfect. Gabriel's monologue, the visual design of the room, the challenging encounter that waits, and the reprise of Castle Vane. Such an amazing way to build up to a boss fight that's soon to come, and fully cementing Cry for the Reaper as the best level I've played in any FPS game. When I was awaiting Act 2's full release, I was naturally excited, but was worried about Ultrakill potentially falling into the Dark Souls trap of having a lackluster second half. Rather the start of me being proven wrong, but Heresy fully washed away all doubts. From the impeccable visuals, the incredible encounter design, and a beautiful soundtrack to accompany it, Heresy shows how good the FPS genre can be. Hopefully Akira manages to one-up himself and experience something even greater. Thanks for watching, tell what you think, and subscribe if you want to stick around. I'll see you again.